Sporting CP versus Arsenal, a night that could change everything for the Gunners this season. Let us be honest with each other for a second. A few weeks ago, Arsenal fans were dreaming. The quadruple was on the table, the Premier League title, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, the Champions League, 4 trophies, all possible. The whole football world was watching and asking, could this finally be Arsenal's year? Then everything changed in the blink of an eye. First came the Carabao Cup final at Wembley, where Manchester City showed up and did what Manchester City do. Nico O'Reilly scored twice and City won 2-0. That one hurt, but Arsenal still had 3 competitions left. Fine, you move on. Then came Saturday, Southampton, a championship club, playing Arsenal in the FA Cup quarter-final. And Southampton won. They actually won. 2-, just like that. 2 trophies were gone in a matter of weeks. Now, Arsenal are heading to Lisbon on Tuesday, April 7th, 2026 to face Sporting CP in the first leg of the Champions League quarter-finals. The match kicks off at 7 p.m. GMT, which is 3 p.m. ET for those watching from the United States, and it will be broadcast live on Paramount+. This is not just another European game anymore. This is now one of the most important nights of the Arsenal season, and the big question on every Arsenal fan's mind right now is simple. Can this team respond? What happened against Southampton and why it matters so much right now? Before we talk about Sporting CP, we need to talk about Southampton because what happened there is still fresh and it is still hurting. Southampton are in the Championship. They are not a Premier League team. They are not a European team. They are a team that was relegated from the top flight and is currently fighting it out in the second division of English football. And they beat Arsenal. Gary Lineker said it best when he pointed out that the next 2 games are massive for Arsenal and that they need to steady the ship. He also mentioned what a lot of people were thinking when he said there were signs of panic in the Arsenal performance. Alan Shearer, who is never one to sugarcoat things, praised Southampton passionately. He said they were brave, had real belief, fed off their home crowd and had incredible energy. He was particularly impressed with how their manager came out publicly and said that his team had a game plan and believed they could find weaknesses in the Arsenal setup. Shearer called that brave to think, let alone say out loud. And the manager was right. Micah Richards added something interesting to the conversation. He said that teams in the Premier League do not usually approach Arsenal the way Southampton did. Most teams sit back, stay compact and try to limit Arsenal rather than going after them. Southampton did the opposite. They were aggressive, they were direct, and they went for it. Richards also made a comment that will stick with Arsenal fans. He said that when you watch that game and Dalman ends up being the best player on the pitch, then the senior Arsenal players need to step up. That is a tough thing to hear, but it is fair. So here is the thing. Southampton have accidentally shown the rest of English football and Europe how to hurt this Arsenal team. Manchester City are watching. And before they meet Arsenal in the Premier League later this month, they now have a blueprint. But first, Arsenal have Sporting CP to deal with. And that is not a small task at all. Who are Sporting CP and why should Arsenal fans be worried? If you have not been following Sporting CP closely this season, let me paint you a picture of what kind of team Arsenal are walking into on Tuesday night. Sporting CP are one of the biggest clubs in Portugal. They play at the Estadio José Alvalade in Lisbon, which is a proper modern stadium that holds around 50,000 fans. On European nights, that place is loud, very loud. And as Arsenal found out the hard way against Southampton, playing in front of a passionate home crowd when your confidence is a little shaky can make things very difficult. Now here is the part of the Sporting story that makes them genuinely interesting and genuinely dangerous this season. In the round of 16, Sporting were drawn against Bodo Glimt. The first leg was played away and Sporting lost 3-0, 3 goals down away from home. Most teams would be thinking about damage limitation and preparing their excuses for when they go out. The tie looked completely over, but Sporting went home to Lisbon and did something remarkable. They won the second leg 5-0, 5 goals after extra time. A 5-0 win at home after a 3-0 defeat away means they went through on aggregate. A team that was 3 goals down came all the way back and not only survived but dominated. That comeback tells you everything you need to know about the character of this Sporting squad and the atmosphere they can create at home. When they need to turn it on, they can absolutely do it. Their coach Rui Borges has built a team with real tactical discipline. The midfield is anchored by Danish international Morten Hjulmand, who basically sweeps up everything in front of the defence. If you have seen him play, you know how important he is to the way Sporting set up. He breaks up play, he wins second balls, and he gives the creative players in front of him the freedom to express themselves. Those creative players are Francisco Trincao and Pedro Goncalves, who are the 2 names Arsenal's defensive players will need to know inside out. Trincao is pacey, direct, and loves taking on his man. Pedro Goncalves, or Pote as the Portuguese fans call him, is technically gifted and can produce moments of real quality. These 2 will test Arsenal's fullbacks all night long. On the injury front, Nuno Santos is expected to miss the match with a thigh problem, and Luis Guilherme and Fotis Ioannidis are doubts, so Sporting are not at full strength either. but they have enough quality to make this difficult, and the home advantage gives them real belief going into this first leg. What does Arsenal's head-to-head record with Sporting tell us? Here is a bit of history that might settle the nerves slightly for Arsenal supporters. When it comes to head-to-head meetings between these two clubs, Arsenal have a slight edge. Overall, their previous encounters, Arsenal have won 3 times, drawn 3 times, and lost just once. That is a decent record. More importantly, the most recent meeting between these two sides was not very long ago. On November 26, 2024, Arsenal travelled to Lisbon in the Champions League group stage and came away with a brilliant 5-1 win, 5 goals away from home against the Sporting side playing in front of their own fans. Now, before you get too comfortable, it is worth remembering that football changes quickly. Sporting have evolved under Rui Borges, and the team that Arsenal face on Tuesday night may set up very differently from the last time. Coaches study the opposition, they learn, they adapt. But still, that 5-1 win is a useful reference point. It tells you that when Arsenal are firing on all cylinders, they are more than capable of handling Sporting. The key question is whether this current Arsenal team, carrying some fatigue and a bruised confidence after the last 2 weeks, can find that level again. The Arsenal injury situation going into this match, this is the part that has been making Arsenal fans nervous for a while now. The injury list. The good news first. Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice and Leandro Trossard were all spotted in training ahead of the Sporting game. That is a positive sign. These 3 are among Arsenal's most important players, and seeing them train gives hope that they will be available to feature on Tuesday night. However, they are not fully in the clear. Saka in particular remains a doubt even though he was training. The same goes for Eberechi Eze, Piero Hincapi and Jurrien Timber. All 4 of them are listed as injury doubts, and Arsenal will need to assess them closer to kickoff. Now, here is something interesting about the team selection for this match. Against Southampton on Saturday, Arsenal actually rested a significant number of their main players. That was clearly a calculated decision by Mikel Arteta and his coaching staff, knowing that the Champions League quarter-final was coming up just days later. Players like Victor Gyökeres, William Saliba, David Raya, Ricardo Calafiori, Martin Zubimendi and Noni Madueke are all expected to come back into the starting lineup against Sporting CP. These are top quality players, and having them fresh and ready to start could make a big difference. The fact that Arsenal rotated so heavily against Southampton says something about Arteta's priorities. The Champions League matters enormously to this club and this manager. Arsenal have been building towards this moment in Europe for a couple of seasons, and Arteta is not going to let fatigue or an undercooked squad cost them in Lisbon. But the question remains, are the big names fit enough? And can Arsenal find their best version of themselves on a night that demands it? How Arsenal got to this point in the Champions League. Let us rewind a little and remind ourselves of the journey Arsenal have had in this competition before arriving at the quarterfinals. Arsenal earned their place in the last 16 by finishing high enough in the new Champions League league phase format. Their performances across those games showed a team comfortable on the European stage, organised, confident and dangerous on the counter. In the round of 16, they were drawn against Bayer Leverkusen, one of the top clubs in Germany. The first leg away at Leverkusen ended 1-1. A draw away from home in Germany is a decent result, and it left Arsenal in control heading back to the Emirates. The second leg at home was a controlled performance. Arsenal won 2-0 and progressed to the quarterfinals without too much drama, clean, professional and effective. That is how Arsenal have been in Europe this season. So when people talk about this Champions League run as a real opportunity, they are right to do so. This is the furthest Arsenal have gone in the competition in many years, and the squad genuinely believes they can go all the way. What would it mean for Arsenal to go deep in the Champions League? Think about this for a moment. The Premier League title is still very much in Arsenal's hands. They sit 9 points clear at the top of the table, and even with Manchester City having a game in hand, Arsenal are in an extremely strong position. Gary Lineker made the point that Arsenal have a huge lead in the Premier League, and he used the phrase squeaky bum time, which tells you how the whole football world is watching this title race play out. But winning the Premier League, while wonderful, would be the 3rd time Arsenal have come close in recent years. It would be significant, it would be special, but it would not be unprecedented for this group. The Champions League is different. Winning the Champions League would mean everything to Arsenal as a club. It would be the statement moment that defines this era under Arteta. It would put this team in the history books. It would mean Arsenal are not just the best team in England, but genuinely one of the best teams in Europe. That is what is at stake when they walk out at the Estadio Jose Alvalade on Tuesday night. The Man City blueprint and what it means for Arsenal's Premier League title race. While we are talking about everything Arsenal have on their plate right now, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room. Alan Shearer made the point that City must overturn a 9-point gap to reclaim their position at the top of English football. However, he also pointed out that the deficit could drop to 6 points if City win their game in hand. And if City then beat Arsenal when the two clubs meet at the Etihad Stadium later this month, just 3 points would separate them with 5 games to go. 3 points. That is how quickly a 9-point lead can become nothing in this sport. Shearer's message about the blueprint is the part that should concern Arsenal fans most. The suggestion is that City have now seen how Southampton hurt Arsenal and will try to use similar principles. Go at them, be brave, identify the weaknesses, show no fear. Micah Richards reinforced this by saying that Arsenal seemed to turn up against Southampton thinking they could just go through the motions. That kind of complacency is dangerous at any level of the game, but in a title race against Manchester City, it can be fatal. Arteta will know this, his players will know this. The Southampton result was painful, but it was also a reminder. In football, no one is too good to be beaten. No lead is too big to be overturned. And no team is too talented to get complacent. Can Arsenal find their identity again before it is too late? Here is perhaps the most honest and important question for Arsenal fans right now. This team built their identity under Arteta around a set of core principles. High intensity, pressing, moving the ball quickly, being brave and direct in attack, and incredibly organised without the ball. When Arsenal play like that, they are one of the best teams in the world to watch and one of the hardest teams in the world to beat. But when the energy drops, when the pressing stops, and when the senior players are not at their best, that identity disappears. And then Arsenal look vulnerable. It happened against Southampton. It happened in parts of the Carabao Cup final too. Thierry Henry, who knows more about what it takes to be a great Arsenal player than most, has spoken about the current crop of players. His comments about addressing individual criticism were picked up widely, and his comparison of a current Arsenal star to Rodri of Manchester City tells you that Henry believes there is serious quality in this squad. The standards are being set high, the expectations are there, the Sporting CP match is a chance to reset, to remind themselves and the watching world of what Arsenal are capable of, to play with that energy and belief that made them title contenders and Champions League favourites in the first place. Arteta is a meticulous manager. He will have had his players watching footage. He will have prepared a detailed game plan for dealing with Trincao and Pedro Goncalves. He will have drilled his team on set pieces, on transitions, on the moments that can decide a two-legged European tie. The question is not whether Arsenal have the quality. They clearly do. The question is whether they have the mindset on the night. What a good result in Lisbon would look like for Arsenal. In a two-legged Champions League tie, the first leg result carries enormous weight. Get it right and you go back to the Emirates with momentum, confidence and options. Get it wrong and you face a much harder task at home. For Arsenal, going to Lisbon and getting a win would be ideal. Even a 1-0 or 2-1 would give them real control of the tie ahead of the second leg at the Emirates. Arsenal have the fans and the atmosphere at home to close out ties, and they have already shown this season that they can do exactly that. A draw would be acceptable but not ideal. It keeps things open and puts pressure on the home leg. And of course, a Sporting win would make things very complicated for Arsenal and would be the third shock result in a row for a team that really cannot afford any more. The previous 5-1 win for Arsenal in Lisbon shows what is possible, and having players like Gyökeres, Saliba and Zubimendi back in the lineup adds real quality back into the side. This is Arsenal's chance to show they are still a team capable of going all the way. Why this Arsenal squad deserves your support and belief right now. Here is something that gets lost in the noise sometimes. This Arsenal squad has had to deal with a mounting injury list all season. They have managed cup competitions, a title race and a European run simultaneously. Several of their key players have been going in and out of fitness for months. The schedule has been relentless, and yet they sit 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League, and they are in the last 8 of the Champions League. And they are doing it with a manager who genuinely believes in a style of football that is worth watching. The last 2 weeks have been disappointing. There is no need to pretend otherwise. But the season as a whole has been one of real progress. Reaching the Champions League quarter-finals is a significant achievement. Being in a strong position to win the Premier League title is a significant achievement. The players, the manager, the staff, they all deserve the support of the Arsenal community right now. Not blind support that ignores problems, but real support that says we see what this team is building and we believe in it even when it gets hard. Tuesday night in Lisbon is a big moment, is a chance to write a better chapter in what has been a complicated few weeks. Final thoughts and what comes next. So here is where everything stands as Arsenal prepare to kick off at 7 p.m. GMT on Tuesday, April 7th at the Estadio José Alvalade in Lisbon. The quadruple dream is gone. 2 trophies have already slipped away, but 2 massive prizes are still firmly within reach. The Premier League title, which Arsenal are well placed to win with that 9-point lead, would be a deeply satisfying moment for a club and fan base that has been waiting for a long time to celebrate again. The Champions League, which represents the absolute pinnacle of European club football, will be something else entirely, something historic, something that belongs in the story of this club forever. Sporting CP will not make it easy. They never make it easy for anyone at home, as Bodo Glimt found out. Their players are motivated, their fans will be loud, and their manager has them believing in what they are doing. But Arsenal have the players, Arsenal have the experience now in Europe. Arsenal have a manager who knows how to prepare for these moments, and Arsenal have a fan base that, even after a difficult couple of weeks, still believes this group can do something special. The next 2 months of football will tell us everything about this Arsenal team, about their character, about their quality, about whether this is truly their time. Tuesday night is the first answer. Get behind the team, enjoy the match, and let us see what Arsenal are made of. Come on, you Gunners.